Yes, good morning. I'd like to bring the December 1st, 2021 Planning Advisory Commission meeting to order. The official start of this meeting is 9 a.m. If you would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you could, please silence or turn off your cell phones for the meeting. Thank you. I remind those in the audience and those watching on TV that this is the first hearing of any rezoning, text change, or special exception request brought before us today. We will first hear a reading of a staff report for the case by planning staff and ask the applicant to provide a brief overview of the request. We will then give the opportunity for anyone in the audience to speak for or against that request or to inquire about the said request. The commissioners will have any needed discussion on the case. Once a motion is made and seconded by the commission, a vote will take place and a recommendation will be rendered. The case will go back to the planning department for their independent recommendation. If a favorable recommendation is given, then the case is forwarded to the city council with 2 independent recommendations. If the planning department makes a recommendation for denial, the applicant will have 10 days from the receipt of the letter of denial to notify the clerk of council that they are requesting to be placed on the city council's agenda. The City Council of Columbus will hold a public meeting called the first reading. Said council will consider the case, review the Planning Advisory Commission and Planning Department recommendations, and hear discussions on the matter. Council will make a final decision at the second public meeting called the second reading. Our first agenda today is to approve the minutes of the previous meeting, and we don't have any minutes, so we'll move forward. That brings us to our first case of the day, which is REZN 1121-2094, a request to rezone 0.96 acres of land located at 1163 Henry Avenue. Current zoning is neighborhood commercial. Proposed zoning is general commercial. The proposed use is an auto truck broker. Darren Atkins is the applicant. The property is located in Council District 3, Huff. We would like to hear our staff report from the planning department, please.
Yes, sir. The general land use is consistent for planning area D. The current land use designation is general commercial. The future is mixed use. It is compatible with the existing land uses. The property does not lie within the floodway and floodplain area. The developer will need an approved drainage plan prior to issuance of a site development permit. If a permit is required, property is served by all city services. Average annual daily trips will decrease to 192 trips if used for commercial usage. The level of service will remain at a level B. The site shall meet the codes and regulations of CCG for all commercial usage. There'll be no school impact, no buffer requirements, no Fort Benning recommendation, no DRI recommendation. The surrounding zoning to the north is NC, to the south is NC, to the east is NC and RMF1. To the west is NC. 55 property owners within 300 feet of the subject properties were notified of the rezoning request. The planning department received 1 call and or email regarding the rezoning in opposition, and there's no additional information.
Thank you. Are there any questions from commissioners with regard to the staff report?
Yes. Just the agenda says the proposed use is auto truck broker. Is that just buying and selling used cars and trucks, or is there something more specific that means?
That's correct. It's just the ability to buy and sell cars. They wouldn't actually be able to store them on there like a traditional dealer.
Will the applicant please come forward and state your name and address for the record and give us an overview of your request, please? Is Darren Atkins here? Or anybody representing Darren Atkins? Okay, we'll go to the next case. The next case is special exception 1121-2095, a request for special exception use at 1846 Buena Vista Road. The current zoning is residential office. The proposed use is a banquet facility. Darrell G. Cater is senior as the applicant. The property is located in Council District 7, Woodson. We'll hear from the staff report.
Sir, this is a special exception use request to allow for a banquet facility located at 1846 Buena Vista Road, Columbus, Georgia, 31906. Buena Vista Road is an arterial road. It will provide adequate free flow movement. Access into and out of the property in question will provide for adequate traffic and pedestrian safety, and emergency access services such as water, utilities, police, and fire protection are adequate. The property is surrounded by other RO uses. Noise, light, glare, and odor should be limited due to the nature of the facility. The hours of operation for this use will not have an inverse impact, impact on the neighboring properties in the area. The structure's height, size, and location should match the uses found in other RO properties. The council district is 7 Woodson. 20 property owners within 300 feet of the property have been notified by mail of the proposed special exception use. The planning department received, I got a few phone calls last night. 8, 9, there'd be 10 people in opposition to this regarding this rezoning. The additional information is concerned with the possible noise from the facility if approved.
Okay. Is there any questions from the commissioners with regard to the staff report? All right. Will the applicant please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and give us an overview of your request, please?
My name is Darrell Carter. My address is 186 Maple Creek Court, Catawba, Georgia, 31804.
Okay. Yeah, could you give us a brief overview?
Yes. The facility is actually a historical facility. It was indicated to me at purchase that a lot of people wanted to get married there because of that case. So I think that a banquet facility would be instrumental in that part of the area, being that it's historical, and that can be something that people that want to get married there and have events there can put the historical factor in there as well.
Commissioners, do y'all have any questions?
What hours would you plan to operate the facility?
So being that, marriages and events can take different hours, I'm thinking that, most marriages would go from like 4 to 8 or something of that nature. But it would be up to and of course it wouldn't be late at night. But it would be up to the people who want to, rent the facility at that time. But reasonable hours, no longer than 10 o'clock or whatever.
I got a question. What's the amount of parking that you'll have at that facility?
So on the one parking lot, it's like 14 spaces there. And so keeping in mind with COVID and, things of that nature like that, we try to keep the parking down, and generally we try to have like small weddings, for that reason.
Well, what's the number of employees you plan on employing there?
So we're looking at from 5 to 10.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
We have security?
Yes, sir.
I mean, law enforcement or higher security?
Depending on the event, we will have both or one or the other, just depending on the event.
And this is only going to be used for a banquet facility?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Because it is a historical site, you don't plan to do any modifications because of the...
Right, exactly. We have to have permission from the Historic Columbus in order to make any modifications or things of that nature. I did talk to Mr., his name escaped me, but he's from Historical Columbus, about adding a ramp for handicap purposes and, things of that nature. He said that would be fine. Yep.
Yes, ma'am. It's on the other
there it is. Okay, how are you doing?
I'm
What is
good.
going to be the capacity of the people? How many people can it hold?
Right at this point, and once again, I've taken COVID in on part of this. With COVID, and the rooms are separate, so that, you know, and then there's cameras and TVs where they can see, you know, say for instance, the group is getting married in this room right here. Another group in another room can see what's happening in that room. So that being said, the capacity is about 100 right now, but we try to keep that down because of the COVID issues that's in our community. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anybody else like to? Yes, ma'am. Would you like to say something?
I'm still concerned about the parking. You said there's 14 spaces.
Yes, ma'am.
If the building will hold 100 people, you know that's not going to be enough parking.
Right. So what we have done, and I've talked to some of the officials over at Aflac, if you know where the building is, the Aflac parking lot is like right next door. So we have asked them, would it be okay if, you know, they had more people, you know, we had more people or more parking needed, could we use their facility? They said as long as it's not during the time that they're in operation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Any more commissioners have any questions?
All right.
Any more concerns?
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak for this case? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak against this case? Yes, sir. Please come up and state your name and address for the record, please.
Good morning. My name is Ron Hamby. I live at 1801 Elmwood Drive. I'm on the corner of Brookwood and Elmwood, and my house backs up to the field, the Aflac field that is behind the facility.
Are you talking about the parking area?
I'm
Are
sorry?
you talking about the parking area that he's talking about?
No.
Okay.
There's the Aflac parking area is on the corner of Overlook and Buena Vista.
Right.
Okay, and then from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, people have also, besides parking there, they've also been parking in that property between the Elms house, call it the Elms house or the facility, and the Brookwood home care facility. Now, I understand that property belongs to Aflac.
Yeah, please come up to the microphone, please.
So, yes, sir, all around the facility is owned by Aflac. And the part that he's talking about between the home, I think it's a personal care home, and there's Aflac's space there, and then it comes into my property on the Elms. So from my understanding, no parking has been done right there in that field area. It's just been the area that comes past that, it's like a brick gate that starts. It's been parking there, up under that magnolia tree.
Now, I and many of the residents of Overlook are opposed to this exception because we feel like it's going to disrupt our quality of life. It could possibly impact the value of our homes to have a banquet facility right in our neighborhood. Also, the letter that came out from Mr. Renfro was dated November the 18th, and it was only sent to people who live within 350 feet of the facility. Well, there are a lot of people in Overlook that didn't receive the letter that are going to be impacted, and they're concerned about this situation. As you know, the letter was dated the 18th, just before Thanksgiving. We received the letter just before Thanksgiving. Everybody in our neighborhood was planning preparing for Thanksgiving. Many of us traveled over Thanksgiving, so really most of us didn't have time to even think about it until this past weekend. I just informed several of my neighbors yesterday, as a matter of fact. A couple of my neighbors had mentioned to me that there have been parties there. I think there have been a number of parties. I don't know how many, but I know over the last several weekends, I've been informed that people have been parking in the Aflac parking lot over there, and the noise has been loud late into the evenings. So our concern is that we don't think that people have had enough time to respond to the situation. So we would like to request that the decision to make a recommendation be postponed perhaps for a month to give the people in the neighborhood an opportunity to consider the proposal and respond. Again, as I said, I've been informed there have been numerous events at the facility. The noise was loud, the music was loud late into the evening, which I understand from Mr. Renfro that that's a violation of the current zoning requirements. And so therefore, I'm of the opinion that they've already established a precedent that they'll violate the zoning requirements. So what's to keep them from violating this special exception that the planning committee may allow them to do? But when the planning advisory committee makes a recommendation, I and many of the residents of Overlook would like for them to reject the request. But if they approve it, we would like, as a special condition to this special exception, that they limit the hours of operation. Do you operate during the week, or is it just on the weekend?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I believe you said that there were events going on previously, or someone told you that there. Okay, so there is a person staying on the premises. He does have company, and stuff like that. So, once again, to my knowledge, there has not been any events per se, but people have been invited over there. Okay. Yeah, so I wanted to make that clear. Another thing, I as the owner am willing to work with you guys in terms of, if we got noise or something like that, feel free to come. I'll leave you my cell phone number, anything like that. If it gets loud, hey, Mr. Carter, it's getting too loud over there, do something about it. I have no problem with that. Okay. Yes, sir.
As a matter of fact, there's a couple of people in the audience who have lived much closer to the facility than I do. One of the people in the audience lives right behind the Aflac parking lot, and I think they're going to come up and say something after I finish. So, also, as I said, cars have been parked in the Aflac parking lot. I've also been told by someone who couldn't be here today that they've been parking in that property between the facility and the Brookwood personal care home. And then the question is, what happens if the people at this event decide to take their party or event or whatever's going on out into the Aflac field behind the facility? That's Aflac property also, as Mr. Carter explained. If someone gets injured on Aflac property, they could sue Aflac. I worked at Aflac for 34 years. I worked at Aflac for 34 years. I'm not here to speak for Aflac. I did write Tom McKenna, the head of the legal department, but I just did it yesterday evening, so he hadn't had time to review the issue. I don't know, John, if if Aflac received notification?
They should have, if they own that piece of property there, it has an address and it went to a mailing address that they own for that piece of property.
Okay, so they should have received
Yes, sir.
notification.
Yep.
Okay, as to whether, as I said, I worked at Aflac for 34 years. Aflac is a big company, and most of the employees are not working at the office now. They're working at their homes like most of us are. Sometimes it takes a while for that kind of information to get to the legal department. And they're the people who would respond. Alfred Blackmar, I don't know if y'all know Alfred Blackmar, he's responsible for the Aflac property over there. And I don't know if he's aware of it. I did email him, but again, just yesterday, and I hadn't had a chance to, I haven't gotten a response from him. So,
Okay.
Any questions for me?
Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
You're saying late hours, late in the evening. What time are you speaking of, sir?
What time have the parties gone on?
No, you said you heard loud music late in the evening. You said it twice. So I'm trying to get, what time are you calling late in the evening? Because I know our time have changed now.
Okay. John Griffin is going to respond to that. He is the neighbor who lives right behind the facility, and he can address that and the noise. Ann Tuggle and her husband John live up there close to, they live right next to the apartments that are on the corner there, or right next to the Brookwood Personal Care Facility. They expressed their concerns to me about late in the evening, but they didn't say how late. So I don't know, but I'll ask John to address that. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, okay, go ahead. Come up to the
Mr.
mic.
Carter.
You had a question. You had a question on the last question you had. I wanted to address.
Well, what if the people at the event went out into the Aflac field? Are they serving alcohol at these events?
No.
No alcohol?
No.
And if someone injured themselves on the Aflac property, they could sue Aflac?
Right. So let me address that. On the back of the property, it is a. Have you been to the property? Okay. It's a.
Sir, can you stand in front of the microphone?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay. On the back of the property, there's a big wall. And so if that person was intoxicated or something of that nature, it would be very difficult for them to get over the wall, because the wall is, it's about as tall as, well, maybe this tall. Okay. Yeah, so it'd be very difficult for a sober person to get over that wall. So the property is kind of cased in, except for this side over here that has like bushes and shrubbery of that nature. And on the other side, the wall comes all the way behind the property and goes to the other side. So, like I was saying with the parking, that I have seen a car parked up under that magnolia tree, which is located on the property, and I've seen a car parked like right next to the well, the water well. But I've never seen it, and it would be kind of difficult because there's a fence there. It'd be kind of difficult for a person to park over in the Aflac area because of that fence, and then being a Vista Road, that being a major thoroughway, that person would have to go over the curb to actually park there. And I don't know how feasible that would be for a person's car.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, I hadn't witnessed that. One of the neighbors who lives one of the neighbors who lives right next to the apartments that are just down from the personal care facility, she is the one who told me that she saw cars parking there. So I did not. Anything else for me? No? Okay.
No, sir. Does somebody else like to speak against the?
Hi there. I'm John Griffin, 957 Overlook Drive. My main concern is the noise level. I would say over the last 2 months, they've probably had maybe 4 to 5 different events there. And the noise will start sometimes in the afternoon about 3 to 4, and it may go on until 8 or 9 at night. Usually the noise that we hear is music. It's loud music. It's the band, it's the DJ, something along that line. The Tuggles who live directly behind me, we've heard it on several occasions. The neighbors reach out, they say, do you hear the music? I've heard the music. We've talked about it on more than probably 2 or 3 different occasions. The letter came out last week. We discussed it again. I came home Sunday this past week, and from being out of town, got home at 4:30. The music was going. Again, it went all the way until 8 o'clock at night. I called the police Sunday to report it. They came out, and I just asked them. I said, "What do we have? What do we have? What rights do we have as neighbors to to report this, to deal with this?" He did say there was a sound ordinance in place, and that at any time that we heard the noise, we could call the police, and that they could come and give a citation to the owner. My concern is I don't want to be that neighbor. I don't want to have to call the police every week when this is an event, when this is an issue. I don't think any of us want to be that type neighbor. We don't want to be bothered by it. We don't want to interfere with their plans, but we also want them to be respectful to the neighborhood. We live in a very well established neighborhood. It's very quiet. That's why most of us like being there. So we don't want to have to be subjected to this type of music and noise on a weekly, daily basis. So that is my main concern. The parking has also been a concern as they do park into the Affleck property. I know he says they've been granted permission to do that. I would like to know that that is really true. My other concern, again, is resale value. If this is something that continues, if they're doing this now and they get granted permission, what's to say it's not going to continue on? If people in town hear that this is an issue and they know it's an issue, they may not buy my house. And I'm the closest house to the property. So I am concerned about what it's going to do to my house, my value, and to the rest of the neighborhood. The other thing I question too is the staff and how is this going to be managed, because the Wynn House is directly on the other side of the neighborhood. They have a governing body, they have a board of directors, they have an executive director. All those events have to be approved, and once it's approved, they have certain stipulations they have to abide by. The executive director is there at every event. And so if there's an issue with noise, an issue with anything, she is on staff. She is there to answer for it, to deal with it. I don't know who's going to be here, who's going to manage this property. Is there going to be someone that's going to control the events? I have a lot of questions. So these are my concerns, and I think we've got several other people in the neighborhood that feel the same way.
Thank you. You got any questions?
You mentioned about someone how close is this other property to your property that you're talking about?
I'm probably 150 feet from the property.
Okay, now you said something about there was another place where you could call someone and they would handle it because they would be the director. Are you talking about another facility? Or you
Do what now? I talked to what?
Okay, you mentioned someone that you could call if there was a problem because they would be the director of whatever you were talking about. Is that another facility, or you just giving an example?
No, at the Wynn House, there's another facility similar on Winton Road. There's a facility called the Wynn House, and it's a private facility that you can reuse for banquets and that sort of thing. And they have a board of directors who governs that property in that facility. And they also have an executive director who manages the facility. And she's on call, and if they have a wedding or an event, she's there at every event to make sure that the event is carried out and that there's no issues. And so that property is managed, really well. So that's my concern here is how is this facility going to be managed? Is the owner going to be there at every event? Is he going to control the noise? That sort of thing.
I thought I heard him offer to give his cell phone to the gentleman that spoke ahead of you
Right.
if there was any problem. So I'm assuming now that he would be there, but
Right.
I'll let him say more about
Right.
that. Thank you.
My concern is they haven't been granted permission this far, at this time. And we've already noticed noise for the last 2 months, probably on 4 to 5 different occasions. So that's my concern. So if you grant them permission and this continues, and I understand if you're having a wedding, yeah, you're going to want to have music. You're going to want to have, I understand the reason for doing it. But you've also got to consider you've got people that live within 150 feet, and I don't want to walk out my back door or be in my house and hear the boom, boom, boom of the music for 4 hours either, so.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, go to the microphone, please.
I understand your concerns, and like I said, I am willing, I will give out my cell phone number right now, 706-570-8698. If you have any problems, and I'm generally there all the time, even though I have a guy that stays on grounds there. You know, I have the manicure worker over the grounds. He comes once a month to, you know, do the grounds. So if you have any concerns or anything like that, I'm free to talk anytime. If I'm not, if I'm doing something, because I work up here at Rainey McCullough School of Arts, send me a text message. Hey, Mr. Carter, I don't know what's going on over there, but this is going on. I guarantee you I'll handle it. You said you didn't, well, I understand you was giving an analogy of the Wynn House. I'm the owner. You know, the buck stops with me. I have Terrence Perry, who's my manager, and then I have a co-owner, Efren McBride, who's in the audience now. Reach out to any of us. We'll be more than glad to, you know, assist on, you know, not getting to know us that far or what have you. One reason why we picked this venue was because there was nothing else around it, you know, and you know, if the music was that loud, I mean, just tell me. You know, I'm more willing to work with any of the neighbors in our community.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Before anybody else, is there anybody else to speak against? If there is, if you're going to say the same thing that we've heard the last two folks, we understand the situation. If you have anything else to share that's new, you know, we'd like to hear it. So you can come to the microphone, please.
I think he wanted my number.
Oh, okay. Yes, sir. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
My name's Ed Kvetkus. I'm at 106 Overlook. I'm probably just a few feet beyond John, who just spoke. So because of that, I guess I didn't get a letter, but I'm definitely against this. I wanted to say that another word, you know, maybe a synonym for the word banquet can be party. Mm-hmm. And I strongly feel that this hurts our neighborhood. The fact that it's already been used without, you know, permission to do that, he said it's not beneficial. His caretakers just had some friends over, but with the number of cars that have been over there, it's probably been about 100 of his closest friends, which I find that very alarming. Now, our neighborhood now is a very quiet neighborhood, and I think it's very unfair to the nursing facility that's next door, to the neighbors who have lived there for many years, for suddenly the neighborhood to change from a quiet, peaceful neighborhood to this event. And so I'm just strongly against this, and I'm urging you to vote against it. Thank you.
You got any questions?
I've got a question for Mr. Renfro. A couple of the speakers have mentioned a nursing care facility very close. Did they respond to your letter asking for comment?
They did not.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions among the commissioners?
I have one.
Yes, ma'am.
Probably for Mr. Renfro. I can see, this is a beautiful building, but the Wynn House, the big difference is they have plenty of parking. I'm still concerned about the parking. Can we postpone this till we find out for sure that Aflac does not have a problem with people parking on their property and get something in writing or something official? Because if it's a banquet facility or a wedding venue, you're going to have a lot of cars. Right. And I did not see that kind of parking. And if they're parking in that lot next to it, that's still not a lot of parking.
Yes, ma'am, you can make a motion and the additional commissioners can vote to table this case before additional information is provided by the applicant.
Well, then I would like to make a motion that this case, just 1 minute, make this official. EXCP 11-21-2095 be tabled until next month or the next meeting so that we can find out if Aflac does give permission for people to park on their property if this becomes a banquet facility.
Okay, would the commission like to make a second?
I second.
All in favor, raise your right hand. All right, thank you. That'll be postponed, I guess, until the next reading.
Yes, sir.
All right. You got a question?
Can we clarify whose responsibility it is to provide the information? Is the idea that the board should reach out to AFLAG, or that we should ask staff should ask the applicant to come back with something in
I would
writing
think
from
staff would
AFLAG,
need to
or-
ask AFLAG. wouldn't
Yes,
you think?
the staff is going to ask the applicant to reach out to AFLAG. They'll have to provide us with some type of documentation that AFLAG says that it's okay or permitted for them to use the property in the hours that they can use that the property for parking. Once that is provided to us, we will reschedule the meeting, and new letters will go out to all of the homeowners in the area again, just like it would be for another first reading for this case.
Okay.
So everyone would be notified again.
All right. That brings us to our third case of the day. Special exception 1121-2096, a request for special exception use at 405 Broadway. Current zoning is historic. The proposed use is restaurant general. Matthew Lapidez is the applicant. The property is located in Council District 7, Woodson. Would the representative like to come up and state his name and address for the record?
Staff report first.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Apologize.
That's all right. This special exception use request is to allow for a restaurant in general located at 405 Broadway, Columbus, Georgia, 31901. Broadway is a local road. It will provide adequate free flow movement. This use will be an accessory use to the property. Access into and out of the property in question will provide for adequate traffic and pedestrian safety and emergency access. Services such as water, utilities, police, and fire protection are adequate. The property is surrounded by other HIST zoning classification. Noise, light, glare, and odor should be limited due to the nature of the facility. The hours of operation for this use will not have an adverse impact on the neighboring properties in the area. The structure's height, size, and location should match the uses found in other historic properties. Council district is 7 Woodson. 20 property owners within 300 feet of the property have been notified by mail of the proposed special exception use. The planning department received 4 opposition calls and emails regarding the rezoning, and there's no additional information.
Is there any questions from commissioners regarding the staff report? All right, would the applicant please come forward and state their name and address for the record?
Good morning. My name is Matthew Lapidez. I actually live at the cottage at 405 Broadway. I think it's numbered 407 in Columbus, Georgia, 31901.
Okay, would you like to give us a brief overview of what you're planning on doing?
Yes, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. The Getches House is a landmark building in Columbus from 1839, and it has deep history. And it already has commercial zoning for a long line of things under HIST commercial. And what we're asking for is the special exception as a restaurant. It's already approved as events and assembly, which would actually require food on space, so this is a special exception. The Getches House is about experiences, and the experience, and my wife wanted to be here. She's 1,000 miles away, but maybe she's watching. But I wanted to bring an experience briefly. Have you had something that triggered your senses that brought you back to another time? Is what I would ask. So I've just triggered a sense that my wife will know, and I know, and that's the sound of comfort. When I was on a honeymoon, we were sitting in a cafe on the other side of the pond, and I was holding my wife's hand, and she heard that sound, and she started to tear up. And I said, "Why are you crying?" And she said, I'm happy. And I said, why are you happy? And she said, listen. And I heard 20 of these around the restaurant. I heard people talking and laughing. I heard the folding of a newspaper. It was an experience that brought her back to a childhood that she didn't have before. And whether it's the smell of a pumpkin pie reminding you of a grandmother, or Ella Fitzgerald reminding you of a special event for the holidays, these are all experiences. And the Getchius House has served as a restaurant for many years, from 1971 until about 10 years ago. But it didn't serve food. It served experiences. It has been an event center that hosted countless proms, weddings, special events, milestones of life. And in fact, since we've been here for the past 6 months, in and out, doing the restoration, getting to know folks, there's really not a single person that has come by that did not have something that they wanted to share, whether it was a nice lady named Virginia on Front Street who said she got engaged at dinner at the Getchius House and she got married there. Whether it was a young couple that showed up and they pulled out their phone and showed me a photo of them sitting on top of one of the dogs on the front entryway next to the sidewalk. And in fact, she reminded me that when she used to eat there with her family, and here's the old Getchius House menu, that she loved the flaming dessert as a banana Foster, and that really took her back. Whether it's the air conditioning contractor that had dinner there for every year during the holidays, it's a place that creates stories. So we are reviving the building. We are reviving that part of Broadway. And we're inspiring Columbus to be more as well, with experiences, activities, and the restaurant is a core part of the immersive experience to happen there. And I think, what makes you happy? Can you describe what that really looks like? What did you do for yourself for fun in the past month just for you? What did you do, as an experience? And this is more than a restaurant. It's an experience to enjoy social events. My wife and I are, we're dreamers, we're creators, and we're builders. And we want to have the Getchius House come back from its dilapidated condition to be an anchor location on Broadway to connect the revival that's happening across Columbus and Uptown all the way through Golden Park and the Olympic softball fields. We've gotten an incredible amount of enthusiasm and open arms from the community. As I share with you not only the stories, but also we have restaurant partners that are very interested. Some are local, some are outside the US, and one's in fact a TV personality that's very interested in being involved in an icon building that's known for its restaurant in the community. We have another partner, Leopold's Ice Cream in Savannah, Georgia, and Stratton Leopold came out. We walked through what the vision was for the events, for the restaurant, for what we'd like to do as a hub for Columbus. He's become a very successful Hollywood director. And after visiting with us, he said, we got to be here. So we're bringing something to Columbus that's special and unique with a great history in itself. As far as the enjoyment for the restaurant and the events, we've entered into a public-private partnership with Auburn University in their horticultural and landscape school. And the students are actually going to have hands-on, be able to get engaged, be inspired, and actually make the experiences at the restaurant something amazing, bringing it back to the time that was when it was built in 1839, incorporating the flowers, the plants, the horticulture with local things to embrace what it was while we still look forward into the future. I did prepare a package, and it's about 20 slides. I don't think I need to go through each slide, but I think some of the elements are important, and I hope that you've maybe taken a moment, because I don't want to read this, to actually understand that from 1839 it was built as passion for Mr. Getchius's wife. And they were there, Dr. Blanchard and his son, Dr. Blanchard, were there through the 1960s. And in 1969, James Woodruff Jr. Saved the house from certain destruction when it was going to be a parking lot at 240 on 11th Street. And with the vision of preserving it And with the means to do it, my understanding is he spent about $1 million in 1970 to disassemble the property, move it down Broadway, and put it atop a brick foundation, brought in millwork, found a bar from a hotel that burnt to the ground in Atlanta, and built it for 2 years. And then he opened the restaurant in 1971. Mr. Woodruff is one of the founding members of the Columbus Historic Society, and it's operated almost continuously until 2010. And I'm going to go here. There you could see the sign. It's been there for the restaurant. I'm here because there's been such a gap in time since it's actually been a restaurant that's open for a special exception that I'm here to make that request. The things that are on our mind, and we've listened to folks in the street, is the same thing that we just heard in the prior case, which was we live here, we enjoy. We don't want to have that be an impact. So we have taken a look at where we are. And I've shown you a map. The little red space on the bottom left is 405 Broadway, the Getchius House. The yellow zone is, in the rectangle, is a historic district, HIST. The green area to the north is Uptown. You'll see the Riverwalk, and you'll also see the skate park, the baseball fields, the Olympic softball fields. We are at the center point as a connector with all of that. The issues that I expect to hear are noise. There's already a noise ordinance in place between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. of 75 decibels. Outside those hours, it's 70. I wish it would be enforced because at 280, the highway that goes above it, if you pull out a decibel meter, the trucks that go south on that road measure over 92 decibels, and the motorcycles winding out to 10,000 RPMs going up the bridge are just as loud. And that's an impact on the community that we can't control. There's going to be issues about parking. So let me just visually show you some of the parking plan. So even prior to the meeting, we had presented to BIHAR a reconfiguration of the existing parking lot, not only for beautification to add some greenery, but also to increase the number of spaces. It currently has, I believe, 16 or 18 spaces. We have the provision to make it anywhere from 20 to 23 spaces, and adding an additional ADA accessible, one for the lower patio and one for the upper level. You're going to see that marked as 405 Broadway, Getchius House private parking lot. That was also presented to the engineering department for the city of Columbus. Mr. Muhammad Ali, I love his name, was able to take a look, and he came back and he did a study, appreciated the fact that we were increasing the number of parking spaces at the lot and reconfiguring it for the beauty of the community. And his report to the engineering department, which he's already submitted, is there is no traffic or parking impact by the use. However, we live in the community. We want to embrace the community. We don't want to be a challenge for the community. So we've taken a look at other possible solutions. One is, you'll see below to the south of 280, literally on the corner of the Getchius House property, is a turnaround on Broadway. Broadway's a public road. The historic area is a public road. Anybody with any legal use can choose to park on it, whether you want to walk around and visit the antebellum houses on the beautiful street, whether you want to take a bike ride, walk a dog, or just sit at the fountain, as Martin does, who is nearly homeless, at the fountain every single day right in front of 405. So anybody could park there. However, that's not our solution. Beyond that, the turnaround has 20 parking places on the other side of the bridge, very easily accessible. We've reached out to the gentleman who owns a commercial building at 412, which is a real estate office. He's got a parking lot behind the building, and on one side are an additional 16 parking places. So we're in discussion. If you look south, you'll see the Civic Center with more parking spaces than we would ever possibly need or use. And we've reached out, and Ms. Ray McConnell was very helpful, and she said we'd be delighted to help, and she will provide some additional information as well. And we could use the space behind the skate park which is hundreds of spaces, far more than we would ever need. And it actually has a pathway above the Riverwalk, but below Golden Park a baseball field that you could walk right over to 405, and that's also a public way. If you look north, there's public parking at 801 Front Street, and that's another option. But realistically, when folks are coming to visit us, there's a lot of means. It's not only car. People are going to walk. People are going to bicycle. People are going to ride share. People are going to ride for 20 miles and hop off of the Riverwalk and walk in there as well. And as a Blue Zone, we're thinking about the overall wellness of people in the community. There are lots of ways that people can get there and enjoy the property without creating an enormous amount of congestion to the folks who live there out of respect. This is simply to view. This is the existing lot. I'll just go through briefly. That's a bird's eye view of the property itself, essentially the property lines. The river's just to the west. Oops, my apologies. Here's existing. Here's a reconfiguration. The blue line's delineating ADA. Here is the turnaround on Broadway. The local Columbus police typically sit in my parking lot that is private, and I welcome them to be there because of the nature of vagrants and homeless in the area. But they also sit right underneath the Broadway turnaround, which is public. Again, here is the public walkway, which is under 2 blocks from the Civic Center overflow. Here is the 801 Front Street parking just up. Again, here is 412 Broadway. And historically, the vacant lot next door, when it was all one property, was also used as overflow parking for events. I've not spoken to the owner about that, but again, there are lots of solutions to alleviate any concerns that folks might have. So I request that you do grant the special exception for the restaurant, since it's already approved as events and assembly, because the restaurant would be accessory to those uses. We ask you to grant it to bring this back to Columbus that's been deteriorating for 10 years. We ask that you grant the request for the respect of the Woodruff family, who took the time and the effort to relocate the property and open a restaurant in 1971. We ask you to grant the approval for the community that we think will be enriched not only by the anchor of a restaurant, but by the 50 to 75 rotating events and experiences that are quiet in nature for families, couples, groups of certain affinities to enjoy the property the way it was always intended to be enjoyed. And we grant this so in the same way that the folks have visited with us, that have shared their endearing stories that brought tears to my wife and I, my eyes, that we're able to look back in 25 and 50 years from now and create the nostalgia that's been cooked up again at 405 Broadway as the Getchius House. And we could all take a look back and see what we've accomplished together. So I appreciate your time, and I certainly want to leave this open for folks who have comments for or against. But thank you so much.
Any questions, commissioners?
What's the maximum number of people you would anticipate having for the events use? I assume you have more people for events than just operating as a restaurant?
Yes, sir. So we've been working closely with the fire department and Captain Turner. We've had to develop a fire plan and an egress plan for the property. The interior, in order to meet the plan, cannot have any more than 100 people. The outside patio could certainly hold more. It could hold another 100 people if we so choose. However, one thing that we're mindful of is keeping people safe. So the requirements that Captain Turner has set, we'll certainly abide by, which would be no more than 100 on the interior.
Any other questions?
I have a question for Mr. Renfro that I probably should have asked before. Since this was apparently used as a restaurant after the UDO was in place, how was that legally permitted? Was it grandfathered in? Was there an SCU?
It was grandfathered in, and that's why he's having to go back now and ask for a special exception to be permitted to use it as a restaurant currently, because it lapsed for 10 years.
Will this be, what type of menu? Will it be similar to the original Getch's House?
Thank you for asking, ma'am. So, our vision of creating experiences is not having a single menu that gets stagnant after 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 years. So what we intend to have is a restaurant where you could be indulgent and have a very fine restaurant. However, we want to be inclusive. We don't want to be exclusive. So we actually have some other restaurant partners that are actually going to have pop-ups or other things using the same kitchen that we have, because the kitchen that's existing for the restaurant is almost 1,000 square feet. It is massive. And we could actually serve the community in other ways. So there'd be other foods, there would be healthy foods, Mediterranean foods that are going to have greens and colors and proper things for overall wellness. And we're going to have things for folks to enjoy as well, just as a family. Sandwiches and great pizza. Remember, there also is a detached building in the back, which would be with Leopold's Ice Cream for folks to enjoy as well. So there's a variety.
Would you consider having valet parking?
So there is a valet covering there already, and that's part of our intent, that there will be a question, I'm sure, for employees. It'll be between 5 and 20. We want to have the spaces there for our guests, not for employees. So we'll have that. And absolutely, if we have an issue where we expect an event or there's a lot of bookings for reservations, we would absolutely want to have a valet service to take folks, whether it's a block and a half away or over on 801 Front. That's not an issue. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. I heard you say that you had 100 inside and over outside for the capacity of the people that's participating in your business. But did you say how many staff members that you was going to have?
So it depends on the time of the day, because there was a small cafe for coffee, juices, kind of reach-in, very basic service. That's minimal staff in the mornings up until lunch. Mm-hmm. But the size of the staff would likely fluctuate between anywhere from 3 or 4 upwards of 20 when it's very active and things going on. The reality of that, though, is in Columbus, which is what a lot of cities are feeling, you can't get staff. You can't get workers. So working with some of our partners with point-of-sale technology and also the design of the venue itself, we're actually designing around the environment that we have. So we're finding ways to have fewer staff, to have a great experience using a variety of things that we've been introduced to. So that's going to help folks as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
One more question. What will your hours be? Will you be open every day of the week until what time in the evening?
Thank you for asking. So I expect that for the Quiet Cafe for coffees and juices, mainly indoor use, probably upstairs in the main area, it probably opens up at 7 a.m. That's probably for folks walking in, cycling in, running by, and joining folks in the neighborhood. The lunch would go all the way through, and then it would probably close by 10 or 11. The noise ordinance has a 10 o'clock cutoff at 75 decibels. It goes down to 10 o'clock after that, so we'd be respectful.
Any more questions? Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak for this special exception? Does anybody like to speak against it? Okay, please state your name and address for the record, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, my name is Debbie Young. I live at 601 Broadway, and I've lived in the district since 2004. As everybody here knows, we've seen a lot of changes in the historic district during that time. And my profession is I'm a real estate agent. And so I get firsthand knowledge of what people are looking for. I've kind of, I've seen the change in the demographic of people who want to live in the district. And this fits exactly into what people moving to Columbus from everywhere want to see, that want to live in that environment. I spoke in support of the CrossFit gym down on Front Avenue. And, again, I think a lot of people are quick to be concerned about issues, and sometimes those things are based out of fear. I think that CrossFit has been a perfect addition to our neighborhood. Same thing with 7th Street Provisions. I mean, so many of us were just so sad when, COVID took that business out, but it was just such a perfect fit into the neighborhood. And yeah, people parked on the streets. I mean, I didn't know anybody over in that area who had an issue with 7th Street provisions. And then I can tell you, you know, as an agent, I showed the Getch's house to multiple people from out of town who were considering it as a residence. And everybody who I showed it to said, oh my God, there's just no way. The amount of money involved that would be required to bring this up to, you know, a residential standard, not to mention it's almost 9,000 square feet. I mean, it's a huge building. You know, it's not gonna be somebody's house. And then you've got, you know, to Matthew's point, the overpass, I mean, you know, it's pretty loud down there. And so I think that, you know, I'm just 2 blocks away from that. But I just think it would be a great addition to the neighborhood. I think it would be a really great addition, especially considering the proximity of it down at the southern end of the neighborhood where, you know, we do tend to have vagrants and, you know, homeless people hang out down there. And so, you know, things in the district have moved towards uptown. I think this is a fabulous anchoring point at the end of the district. And I mean, you know, it just seems to me that there's plenty of parking down there. I mean, yeah, they have a nice sizable lot, but they do also have that turnaround and all of those parking spaces down there. But I mean, I as a neighbor, I'm very, very excited about the possibility. I mean, my parents used to come to the Getch's house for dinners, and they lived over in Plains, Georgia. So I mean, it is a destination location. And to have someone who sees the possibilities, because I mean, it was just going down, down, down. I mean, the thing was just a mess when I showed it. I couldn't believe it. It was almost as if somebody just walked out of the kitchen one day and left all the stuff in there. I mean, moldy. It was just, and nobody could even, I think, fathom taking on that project. So we're just excited that, you know, that somebody came here who was excited about it and saw the opportunity and the possibility. So I think it could be great for the neighborhood and great for Columbus. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak for? Yes, sir. Please come to the podium, state your name and address.
Good morning. My name is Charles Walker. My wife and I have lived at 429 Broadway. That's 2 doors up from the Getch's house for over 40 years. We have seen the Woodruff Getch's house, the Blue Dow's Getch's house, and other attempted happenings as far as a restaurant is concerned. I feel like that having the Getch's house as a restaurant again would be a positive thing. And so I just wanted to mention that. I can recall going to the Getch's house on a couple of the special occasions for my wife and I and our family. But there are so many people that now walk, whether it's walking their dogs or put it this way, the foot traffic is much larger than it was when my wife and I bought our house and basically sort of fixed it up ourselves. Hardly anything was going on downtown. And I just feel like that this would probably be a positive thing. So thank you so much.
Thank you. You got any questions for him? Okay. Does anybody else like to speak for? Yes, ma'am. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Leticia Cluverios. I live on 4th Street on Broadway. Me and my husband moved a year ago to Columbus, Georgia from Washington, D.C., where we never had a problem. We live in D.C. for 4.5 years in downtown. No problem with parking space. We love Columbus so much, so we got the house on the corner of 6th and Broadway and renovate it from nothing. We put a lot of money, a lot of effort on that corner, and you can see the renovation process on Discovery Plus. The name of the program is First Time Fixer Upper, Episode 2, Season 2. So you can see the whole process of renovating that property. I am in favor of this project because I think it will revitalize the area. It will stop a little bit of crime on that end of Broadway, and it will be more safety for us. I have a 3-year-old son, and we normally go for a walk on the other side of Broadway instead of going underneath the bridge because we're scared of people and things going on there, and we're really much in favor of this project.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you, ladies, for coming. I did want to address the crime issue just for a moment. When we bought the property, I had Georgia Power come out and put some LED lights for the parking lot. They're going to put one on the backside as well. It's been vacant and a long time, so it is a hub of homelessness and challenges. Regretfully, a couple weeks ago, someone smashed one of her back doors, broke in. They were in the house for a long time, stole a bunch of stuff, and the Columbus Police Department recovered it, amazingly enough. But we weren't mad. We weren't, angry. It was a realization that Columbus has an issue like everybody else. And this person was forced to do something he might not normally do, to find some things to sell for drugs. He was doing drugs in the house as well. The police found, he was smoking crack, is what they said. So it was a realization that we need to help. So instead of being angry and pounding my fists, we picked up the phone and we called some homeless shelters, understood what's going on, figured out who we could help, and understanding what kind of folks do not want help. And by bringing some life, activity, brightness, people walking, and it is very active, as the lady said, with cyclists and dog walkers and people even from Phoenix City and even from the courthouse in Phoenix City. They're walking around all the time. We want it to be a safe environment. And it's not that we want to push folks that are destitute. At this point, we want to provide help with them. And then having this environment reestablished will help create some safety on the south side of Broadway, especially under 280, which has been a concern. There have been some tents removed over the past years there for folks living there. And when this lights up and you have things happening, folks that are homeless and down in their luck, they move away from those areas and find another quiet space that they're going to be unnoticed and undisturbed to do what they have to do. So from a crime standpoint, I think this is also a benefit for the south side as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody in the audience that'd like to speak against? Yes, ma'am. Please come to the podium, state your name and address.
Good morning. My name is Donna Anderson. I have several addresses. I'm here representing 6 properties. I am the owner of a business also at 501 Broadway, which is Travels by Donna. If Matthew would put that last slide back up, do you mind doing that? Certainly. Thank you.
Oh, you have it?
Oh, it's up, perfect. If you notice the vacant lot beside the Getch's house, Matthew put that 407 address as a parking alternative possibility. That is not going to happen. I don't approve of the rezoning because of the fact there's no parking. If you look down at the end of the lot, or the end of the street, we own 445, 447, 407, and 439. So 3 houses right there and the lot behind it. Also, across the street, 501 Broadway, and on front, I have 510 front. So if the proposed parking is in that lot, that won't work. If the proposed parking is in the Getch's house, there's not enough space. You can't make 20 spaces out of 14 that are already there. I don't know how you're gonna increase that space. Underneath the bridge is open. Of course, that is public. But again, it's always full. They have Pokemon, they have car shows, they have everything down there, and you know, that's a hit or miss. So who's gonna go and park under the bridge at the Getch's house to go to the Getch's house? Who wants to park all the way on Front Avenue? And keep in mind, Front Avenue is a one-way street. So you have to go down front in order to get to the Coca-Cola Science space. So you can't come back the opposite way, which many cars do, and it is a safety issue there. So I'm real familiar with that too. Now keep in mind, I've been in the district for 35 years. So I bought my business that long ago. And I have been operating and working with these wonderful neighbors, which we love each other, and so we can oppose but still love each other. I heard a lot of the sensories and the experience, but I didn't hear anything about the plan. Where is the dumpster going to be? What times will they be dumping? You know, they have to have a big dump. Where is that going to be? What are the times of the businesses? How many people are going to be there? Is there going to be security watching these cars that are parking in front of our houses? We don't have driveways. I don't have a driveway. If I want to go in my backyard, I can and park in my grass, but I have no driveway. So I have to park all of those houses, we park in front of our house. So if you've got 100 people outside and you've got 100 people inside, where are the cars going to be? They're going to be in front of my house because they don't want to go to the Civic Center and they don't want to go to the Coca-Cola Science space. So they're going to park on both sides of that street, and I'm going to be blocked in, and I won't have a place to park. So these are concerns. Matthew also mentioned that the historic district is zoned for events. To my knowledge, it is not zoned for events. Now, the downtown area where the parties and bars, they are zoned for the events. I think that should be looked at. I think we need to call in the historic district and find out if it is zoned for events, because to my understanding, it's not. I also, years ago, at 439 Broadway, opened a bed and breakfast and did it the legal way, got an occupancy, got a business license, and then after the fact, after I had all of that, I was taken to this court. And because of the fact that years ago, they had in the zoning that you had to live in the district in order to operate a bed and breakfast. I didn't live in the district then. I lived on Techwood Drive. I put Techwood Drive on the occupancy, and the business license was still granted a business license. I had so much opposition from downtown. They even fined me because I was operating an illegal party place, which was not true. The time I spent to argue the facts that you cannot tell a person where they have to live in order to operate a business in Columbus, Georgia, we ended up winning that case. But $20,000 later, and a lot of opposition from the neighborhood, it wasn't worth it. I saw what happened when I had people stay at that bed and breakfast. I saw where they parked. I saw the time I had to spend over there operating that, operating my travel agency, and operating Winnan Hardware. It was extremely hard. It's not for everybody. And you can't dictate where these people park. You can't say, you can't park in front of 439. You can't park in front of 407. You can't park because it's city property. But where are the people going to park that live there? So those are concerns that I've got. Nothing against Matthew's renovation. The house is beautiful. I've eaten there myself. But their businesses are hard to run. I mean, 7th Street Provision didn't make it. It didn't make it as the vegetarian one. It didn't make it as the, coffee shop. They're very hard. A restaurant is very hard. And several of the people mentioned how our neighborhood down here on the southern end is real crime-ridden. Well, I've been down there living now for about 10, 12 years. And yes, we all have problems, but I don't think we have any more problems on the southern end than I did living on Techwood Drive. It's just part of life. It's not because it's on the south, and bringing back that restaurant is not going to stop the crime. It's not going to make the people, stop breaking in and stealing bikes and taking my ladders out of my backyard. It's just not going to change it. So I have questions. My questions are parking. My questions are, the safety, of course. My question is, what are the logistics behind? Where are you going to put dumpsters? And is it really already an event center area? Does that mean that I can change my travel agency and host events every night? I don't think so. So those are my concerns.
You have any questions?
I've got a couple from Mr. Renfro that come out of what she said. One is the historic area currently zoned for events?
They can run temporary events, yes, sir.
Temporary events?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then the other is, have Historic Columbus or the Historic District Preservation Society taken positions on this application?
They have not, to my knowledge.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Anderson, if they provide valet parking, say at the Civic Center or something, does that fix the problem?
Wouldn't they have to get permission from the Civic Center to be able to allow an event off-site to park there? Have you been downtown where the valets park in front of Salt Cellar and Ma Bell's? It's a nightmare. You go up there, the valet is sitting there. You drive up and you jump out of the car, they block the traffic. The traffic is already very hard to get around those cars that are parked at an angle. So as you're parking your car and the valet comes and takes it, it's already a disturbance in the road, which is I love the valet. I really do, but there are logistics about it.
Right, but
I'm sorry,
I'm sorry. The Getch's house is more off the beaten path, though.
Right.
It's not where, like, Salt Cellar and
But they have
Marbella.
an agreement with the parking garage that they can go over and take those cars to the parking garage.
Right.
There's no agreement here with Coca-Cola. I know that's public parking out on the main street. There's no agreement with the Civic Center.
But if they come up with a place and it's approved, then that would be
No,
better.
it wouldn't change it. Is it going to be a requirement that they have valet? And are they going to tell everybody, in order to come to this party, you're required to valet and not park in front of people's houses?
Okay.
Any more questions? Thank you.
Yes.
Is there anybody else that would like, sorry. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Could Mr. Lapidus address maybe the sanitation issue that she has a concern about?
Yes, ma'am. So thank you for your for your comments, ma'am. That's a lot to unpack. So let me address the sanitation. So that's part of a BHAR proposal that's getting submitted in December because they require that as well. It's going to be in the parking lot. I don't control the city garbage pickup, regretfully. The building is zoned commercial. So to the extent that we could ask the city to pick up a certain time, I really don't know. But it would be in the main parking lot and would be disguised from an appearance standpoint, probably with wood slats, so it wouldn't be noticed. And that actually requires BHAR approval. We had that discussion in November at the BHAR committee meeting. Yes. So a few comments. First, I think the lady has suggested that I put one of the 6 or 7 parking solutions, and I had not spoken to the owner of 407. She said she would not allow that, so I would ask that you disregard that particular page. I'm a little, I guess, curious. So she's come to oppose the action, and she owns 9/10 of an acre that used to be part of the property that's vacant and overgrown and could easily be used, yet she might not be willing to use the space that she owns adjacent that had been parking lot previously. So I'm not sure, so I could satisfy everything. Regarding Broadway, Engineering and Traffic did a study. It's already been submitted. They say there is no impact to parking or traffic. Broadway and all those streets is public parking already for anybody to use. And it's regretful, and as I said, we want to be responsible for folks who are there. Ray McConnell is a contact at the Civic Center. We have another call tomorrow, and there is no issue with the Civic Center to use that space on the pathway whatsoever. But again, I think we've shown, excluding 407 now, as far as the empty lot, we've provided 5 other parking solutions to accommodate, even considering that Broadway is already public parking.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, the Getch's house that was there, was there a parking problem?
Well, I think the folks, maybe the gentleman who spoke or someone else who's lived in the community for a long time can make the remark better than I. My father went through Fort Benning, you know, in 1949. My son went through Fort Benning in 2017. We've been coming here for 4 or 5 years now, enjoying it. The place has regretfully been closed, so I would not be a good source person to comment on the parking issues previously. As the ladies did say, you know, I could comment that there is a huge amount of foot traffic and bicycle traffic, and there's a lot of ways to get there outside of parking with public ride services, with Lyft and Uber. And if you want to have a drink or two and not concerned about driving, there's a lot of other ways to get there these days versus the old-fashioned ways. Even, Jason, who owns Ride on Bikes, has talked about adding a pedicab service. He'd had it a few years ago. He had a lot of fun with to move folks around in a nice way up and down Broadway to see the sights and get down to 405 as well. So parking is only, one issue or one method from an automobile to get there.
Okay, thank you. Can she answer my
Yes,
question?
ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
If you go to the microphone, please.
When I bought 501 Broadway, which is where the travel agency is at this point, this was 35 years ago approximately. I'm getting older every day. But back then, I used to have a panic button in the front of my office. And the doors were locked at all times. You couldn't come. Nobody came down in the district. Nobody. Nobody lived down there. It was very different back then. And people would say to me, what are you doing down there? Why do you have your office down there? And they felt it was very unsafe. And over the years, I keep the door open now. I don't even lock my doors. I feel that comfortable and that safe. But parking back then, when people went to the Getch's house, you didn't have the amount of traffic back then. You didn't have the groups that went. I had my engagement party at the Getch's house. So it was probably 30 people. So you had smaller groups that went, and the traffic wasn't a problem because you didn't have the residents back then. You didn't have the foot traffic. You didn't have the people biking, and it just was different. So that's my take on it. So,
thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, ma'am. Please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Good morning. My name is Robin Tremarky. I live at 720 Broadway, and I'm currently the president of the Historic District Preservation Society. And to answer your question, sir, we have not taken a position yet. I'm here today to gather information. We have a board meeting on December 15th they'll bring to the board, and then they'll decide whether or not to take a position. And if we do, we will email Mr. Renfro. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Just to confirm, Mr. Renfro did confirm that a permitted zoning use is already event and assembly. And what I'm going to submit to you is the activity of the restaurant would be less of an issue. I appreciate that some folks think it's going to be so busy that it's going to clog up all of the driveway. My wife and I are as nervous as 2 cats in a room full of rocking chairs, thinking about what we're doing to elevate that community and the building and to bring something special and have it not work out. And that's a possibility. And there have been restaurants there that have not worked out. And that's how we're reimagining it. So we don't know what the outcome would be, but we'd rather be prepared and organized and understand the resources we have available to make it very livable and safe if we are to be that successful. And if not, well, That's what happens. We hope that's not the case. We're going to think positive over it. But, you know, we do welcome folks back, and we're mindful, and like I said, in the same way for the restoration, doing it with the guidelines of not only BHAR, but also the state of Georgia, but also being mindful of the community and parking and safety for everybody to enjoy. We do have an alarm system and safety and a fire plan with Captain Turner. We also have a security system that will cover the parking lots. So it'll cover the front, the sides, and all those areas. And I regret that we've only owned the house for 3 months, and we've already had, 2 break-ins that are going on. So maybe folks in the rest of the street are more fortunate than us. I think anytime you have a renovation going on, it's prime pickings for anybody who wants to buy, who wants to pick up equipment, materials, supplies that might be left out overnight, or that might see something in a window. But we've been, directly impacted by these things, and we want to be part of the change for the better of Columbus, not to deteriorate anything that's happening in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, commissioners? All righty. Would a commissioner like to make a motion? Okay.
Okay, I will. I make a motion that EXCP 1121-2096, a request for special exception use of 405 Broadway. Current zoning is historic. The proposed use is a restaurant. General Matthew Lapidus is the applicant. This property is located in Council District 7. I move that we approve this request.
Good. We have a second. Thank you, Mr. Dudley. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All right, it's approved. Thank you. All right, on to our next case. It's rezoning case REZN 1121-2097, a request to rezone 1.63 acres of land located at 323 16th Street. Current zoning is light manufacturing, industrial, and general commercial. Proposed zoning is uptown. The proposed use is multifamily. Ken Henson Jr. is the applicant. This property is located in Council District 7, Woodson. We'd like to hear the staff report, please.
Yes, excuse me. General land use is consistent for planning area D. Current land use designation is vacant undevelopment. Future land use is high density mixed use. It is compatible with existing land uses. The property does not lie within the floodway and floodplain area. The developer will need an approved drainage plan prior to issuance of a site development permit if a permit is required. Property is served by all city services. Average annual daily trips will decrease to 160 trips if used for residential use. The level of service will remain into level B. The site shall meet the codes and regulations of CCG for residential usage. There'll be no school impact, no buffer requirements, no Fort Benning recommendation, no DRI recommendation. The surrounding zoning to the north is general commercial, to the south is UPT, to the east is GC, to the west is LMI. 25 property owners within 300 feet of the subject properties were notified of the rezoning request. The planning department received no calls or emails regarding this rezoning, and there's no additional information.
Thank you. Are there any questions from commissioners with regard to the staff report? All righty. Would the applicant please come forward and state your name and address for the record?
Thank you. My name is Ken Henson. I live at 612 Broadway in downtown Columbus.
Okay. Would you please let us know what your plans are?
Well, I've just recently built the building that you see there on 2nd Avenue. We built, almost finished, with 65 new apartments. And on the back, we've got 3 homes that we are renovating that will add another 5 units. So we've got 74 new apartments. I'm optimistic that these will rent, and in an effort to improve that area, I purchased the block north of a House of Mercy from them last year. All of the block but one little lot in there that I think is about 60 or 70 feet by 100 feet in the middle. And the reason I bought it was it had been overgrown for years. The Veterans Parkway Viaduct had put it in a hole, and it didn't look like anybody was going to do anything with it. So it looked to me like maybe these apartments might work at that location too. And so the plan is on the south side of 16th Street, and on the east side of Third Avenue to build another building similar to the one in the photograph. It would mimic that in the brick, in the windows. The yellow there would be black like the rest of it. They had a problem getting the right black paint, but that should be fixed soon. But the building would look very similar to that building.
Okay. Any questions, Commissioners?
Do you have any ongoing connection with the House of Mercy, or you just bought the land from them?
I've been in conversations with the House of Mercy about their plans for their building and what they plan to do, and they didn't have any plans for this property, and so they thought it was a good idea that it be put to some use. And so hopefully that's what we're going to be able to do.
Okay, any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Henson, how many units do you plan?
The building that you're looking at is 36. The building that we're proposing would be 24. It'd be 12 one-bedroom and 12 two-bedroom.
Thank you.
Is there any more questions? Your light's on. I didn't know if you had a question.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. All right.
Mr. Henson, I will ask this, is there room for parking? I mean, it's not a huge lot.
Well, there's room, and what we did on 3rd Avenue, on 3rd Avenue behind the building that you see there, and also on 16th Street, is a part of the plan. The city right-of-way for these streets is 100 feet. We have gotten permission to add parking on the street, and that enables us to do what we've done here. Similar to what they did down at First Baptist Church, St. Luke. There are other areas in the uptown area where the city has allowed people to add parking when it's not a real busy street. And so that's what we plan to do on 16th Street, which is a dead-end street. We'll hopefully use some of the city right-of-way and add some additional parking. But there'll be more than enough parking.
Is there any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Is this a low-income facility, or the rate for the rent? How are you doing that? Is this for a low income?
These are market rate apartments, and quite frankly, in order to make these apartments work, you have to charge more here than on the north side of town where they're building new apartments. These are not as expensive as the Rapids, which is down on the river, which was a multi-rise building, but these are a little bit more than the garden-style apartments on the north side of town in order to make it to work. They're brick, and there's some other things that make them a little more expensive.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? Would the Commissioner like to make a motion? Oh, yeah. Is there anybody in the audience like to speak for this project? Does anybody in the audience like to speak against? All righty. Well, do we have a motion? Any commissioner like to make a motion?
When it comes to REZN 1121 29-7, a request to rezone 1.63 acres of land located at 323 16th Street. Current zoning is LMI, light manufacturing, industrial, and general commercial. Proposed zone is UPT, Uptown. The proposed use is multifamily. Ken Henson Jr. is the applicant. The property is located in City Council District 7, Mimi Woodson. I vote that we approve this.
Yeah, can I get a second? Thank you, Mr. Dudley. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All right, it's unanimous. Thank you. Passes.
Thank you very much.
We're going to circle back to the first case.
Okay,
The
yes,
applicant,
yeah, okay.
the applicant is here, so if you'll reread the agenda, I'll reread the staff report, and then we can go from there.
All right, our next case is rezoning case 1121-2094, a request to rezone .96 acres of land located at 1163 Henry Avenue. Current zoning is neighborhood commercial. Proposed zoning is general commercial. The proposed use is an auto truck broker. Darren Atkins is the applicant. This property is located in Council District 3, Huff. And We need to hear the staff report, please.
Yes, sir. The general land use is consistent for planning area D. The current land use designation is general commercial, futures mixed use. It is compatible with existing land uses. The property does not lie within the floodway and floodplain area. The developer will need an approved drainage plan prior to issuance of a site development permit if a permit is required. Property is served by all city services. Average annual daily trips will decrease to 190 trips if used for commercial use. The level of service will remain at a level B. The site shall meet the codes and regulations of the CCG for commercial usage. There'll be no school impact, no Belleville requirements, no Fort Benning recommendation, no DRI recommendation. Surrounding zoning to the north is NC, to the south is NC, to the east is NC, and RMF1. To the west is NC. 55 property owners within 300 feet of the subject properties were notified of the rezoning request. The planning department received one call in opposition regarding the rezoning, and there's no additional information.
All right, is there any questions from commissioners with regard to the staff report? Okay. Will the applicant please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and give us an overview of your request, please?
Morning. My name is Darren Atkins. I reside at 5242 Verdon Court, Columbus, Georgia, 31907.
And my name is Brenda Ewelike. I reside at 525 Valley Crest Court, Columbus, Georgia, 31907.
Thank you. Could you give us an overview of what you plan on doing, please?
Our intention was actually to try to save money. COVID, pretty much shut everything down. And so me and my sister here got together and we decided to try to join our one business at my office so that we could try to save some money and so forth. So she does sell auto vehicles. She does an average maybe 3 or 4 a month is what she does. But she just needs the place to be zoned properly in order to actually do the licenses and applications and stuff there at the business.
Yeah, y'all plan on having a retail car lot where you'll have cars out there for sale, or are they just going to be private sales only?
It should be private sales only.
I got you. Is there any questions from commissioners? Yes, you got one? Okay.
What will be the hours?
I operate now from 10 to 7 from January through June because I do taxes. So, but during my off season, I'm actually just on call. But I guess if y'all approve this here, that she will actually be in the office itself probably from 10 to 5.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to speak for this matter? Obviously not. Anybody like to speak against it? All right, do we have a motion on the floor?
I would like to make a motion to approve rezoning case number 11212094 to rezone .96 acres of land located at 1163 Henry Avenue from neighborhood commercial to general commercial. Use is compatible with existing land use.
All right, anybody like to make a second?
A second.
Thank you. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All right, it's unanimous. Passes. Thank you.
Man, I thank y'all so much. Thank you, Mr. Refer. Have a good day.
Thank you.
All right. Does any commissioners have any questions at all before we adjourn? All right, this party's adjourned. Thank you for your help. Thank you for straightening me out a few times.